Welcome to the Theotherapist Podcast, where theologically trained, licensed therapists share health and healing conversations. Join our host, Dr. Trice Glenn, for conversations about real-life issues from both theological and therapeutic perspectives. Each week, we speak to guiding questions with real-life application, humor, and engaging guests to share meaningful dialogues with our listeners. Let's begin.
Welcome to the second season of the Theotherapist Podcast, episode 2. I'm your host, Dr. Trice Glenn. I'm so glad that you are joining me. Today, one of my favorite guests is joining me, and that is the Reverend Dr. Wynnetta Wimberly. So everyone, you are in for a treat. Dr. Wimberly is one of my favorite people. We did our doctorate work together at Emory University, and so I am so thankful that she took time out today to come and join us. So let's kick off, and let me tell you a little bit more about Dr. Wimberly. Well, first of all, she is the founder and director of Holder Consulting, where she specializes in care and counseling and consulting with clergy. She's a womanist pastoral theologian. She's clinically trained in psychodynamic psychotherapy, marriage and family theory, and spiritually based counseling. But that's not it. That's not all. She's also the assistant teaching professor of practical theology and pastoral theology, care and counseling at Wake Forest School of Divinity in Winston-Salem. Beyond that, she has a background in research and looking at the integration of research and topics such as post-traumatic stress, working with children and hope who struggle with end-stage renal failure at the Children's Hospital of Atlanta, several different integrative topics with the National Center for Bioethics and Research and Healthcare with Tuskegee University. And on top of all of that, she is an ordained pastor in the American Baptist Church. She has a book called The Depression in African American Clergy. And I'm just so happy to have her here and to talk through her passion projects and the things that have led her to do this work in theotherapy. So welcome, Dr. Wimberly.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's so great to see you. Hug, 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 hug.
Hug, 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 hug. Well, I want to start by asking you the same thing I asked most of my theotherapist friends. What got you into integrating these two worlds, the world of theology and the world of psychology? What drew you to it?
I can remember being in seminary and first semester, and right around midterm time, a lot of my colleagues were going through a lot of challenging issues, heart attack, loss, stress. And I can remember going over to the university's infirmary because I think I had an allergic reaction to something and my feet were swinging off the gurney. And she came in, the nurse practitioner came in and said, "What's going on at that seminary anyway? We see more of your students than we see of Princeton University students." And I thought it made me take pause to think, well, yeah, I guess we do have a lot going on. Competition, the competitive nature of being in a prestigious program, our personal lives, our ministerial lives, everything colliding. And it was at that point, I believe I was serving on as the chaplain for the Association of Black Seminarians, and really began to take a closer look at what was going on among seminarians in terms of mental health care. So I would say that was kind of like the catalyst for actually engaging in the work. It's just so many of us were going through, and there was essentially, there was a counseling center there that some people felt comfortable enough to engage. But that's where those two worlds collided.
Definitely. We both haven't gone through seminary and recognizing that there is a deconstruction process that happens in seminary by itself that sometimes can trigger, certain internal struggles And if you were already struggling with some mental health concerns, that can, present for you a new challenge that you hadn't faced before. And so it's really important that someone was paying attention enough to be motivated to do something about that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that was just a seminary experience. Of course, as a minister, at the time, a minister in a church, having served, I believe, 17 years, even along that trajectory, hearing and having conversations with colleagues in ministry and the challenges, life challenges, right? Marital challenges, children challenges that come up, and finding that there's really no safe space for clergy to go and to feel cared for.
Right.
The expectation is that we always have to give, right? That's the Christian services unto the Lord. Without caring for ourselves or practicing efficient self-care.
I think one of the biggest challenges, just like I see clergy in my practice, in my mental health practice, and a lot of times it is recognizing for them that they can't continue to pour out of an empty vessel. Because so many people are pulling at them and pulling at them constantly to pour into them, to be there for them, to care for them. And clergy sometimes neglect, of course, pouring back into themselves and into the people who they love, into their family and those that are close to them. So that's why today's topic is caring for clergy, recognizing that sometimes clergy needs someone who's being attentive to them. And someone who recognizes, what the hurdles look like. And I think it's unique that we have this background because we walked that journey, right? And so when you look at someone who is walking the clergy journey, sometimes it can feel isolating, like, you're so used to pouring out, but who is there to pour back into you? And oftentimes people don't recognize just how intentional clergy need to be in order to take care of themselves. Excuse me. And so when you think about your passion project or your passion area in the work that you've been doing, is that what pointed you in that direction, or are there other incidents or experiences that pointed you that way?
I'm a big proponent for, I cut my teeth in social work. And social work is a field that can be very demanding because you're always giving out.
Right.
So the helping profession is kind of where I found myself. But what I learned in social work is the need for balance, right? The need to de-stress or disrobe from the concerns of the world. Just as I stepped in my front door every day. And so I took that practice right into ministry, because ministry can be so demanding. And you can be so caught up in the giving that you do look up and recognize that you're drawing from an empty vessel. The oil is gone, right? And the grace to care for others is just gone. So for me, I like to practice good self-care. I have tremendous boundaries. I'm proud of my boundaries. And but the people that love me and care for me and care about my well-being, that is something that you have to create for yourself, a safe place to fall down, a safe place to be, a safe place to rest. And it takes strong relationships and friendships, people that know the demanding work that you do and respect that and don't dump on you, or just there to be whatever you need them to be, a listening ear, a comforting friend, a tennis partner, whatever. It takes ensuring that you have those safeguards in your life, good, healthy friendships, good, healthy relationships, and people who honor the work that you do to the degree that they also guard your self-care. They understand that you need time to debrief from the work that you do. You need rest. You might need a movie. You might need to sleep. Hey, look, I'll call you back in 3 hours. Let's get together on Saturday. Just basic, right? Healthy relationship patterns. But being boundaried, practicing good self-care, allowing yourself the grace to be who you are, not making apologies for who you are and the work that you do and the call that comes along with that work, right? It might be too much for some, because sometimes people can be very demanding in their expectations of you. When you have, and the church world, the gift of helps, or when you walk in the shoes of counseling, they place demands on you that are can at times be disrespectful. The expectation that you will always be on, that you will always have an answer. Yes, 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 yes. So I have a very good no muscle. Well, I think for me, I think that we ought to, in terms of clergy care, giving clergy the space, allowing them the space to be who they are. Outside of the role, taking off the cape and, I don't think that we give clergy room to be who they are. It's always I just need you to function in that role. Do that.
So for each one of our episodes, we have a guiding question, and that somewhat helps to orient us toward the work that we're doing. For this particular podcast, the guiding question is, what factors should we consider with clergy care and clergy depression? And this basically just kind of sets the tone for, are there things in particular that we need to think about when we're thinking about taking care of clergy, or factors that might lead to clergy depression?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So one of the first things that I would say is to allow clergy to be who they are, as opposed to functioning in the role that they've been assigned or taken on.
Yes.
Sometimes people don't really see clergy as people. That sounds strange, but as people with lives and preferences and likes and lives, golf,
Exactly.
tennis, gardening. They tend to just see the collar, just see the role, just see the access, just see the help, just see their own need and someone to grab hold of to meet that need, right? And because oftentimes, I read an article a few years ago that said that clergy and dentists were the most unappreciated positions outside of teachers. Clergy and dentists, the most thankless positions. People don't remember to say thank you, don't tend to value, only in the moment of the need.
And then beyond that, no.
Which can be beyond that, like, all right, Rev, I'll see you next year sometime. When I have another issue pop up. It doesn't serve, it's not Christian. It doesn't serve the idea of community, to approach clergy in that way. It doesn't allow for consideration of the fullness of life.
Exactly.
The fullness of life outside of a pastoral role, clergy function. So I would say to respect the office, but honor the person, the personhood of the person.
Absolutely.
The personhood of the person. Yeah.
One of the things that I encounter often when I try to explain to people, to respect the personhood of clergy is to remind them that, look, they have the same issues you have. They have siblings, who have drama. They have families of origin that, sometimes have situations and issues. They have grief in their life. They may have financial instability at times because of the nature of the work that they do. They are people. They are people who give as a way of living and a way of being, but that doesn't, preclude them or protect them from what ails humanity. They're still going to face the struggles you have, but not only are they caring for themselves, someone is asking them to care for them as well. And I think it's how we position how clergy are taken care of. That's so important for us as a family of faith. Because if we're so interested in taking care of our brother and sister, are you also taking care of the leader? Right. Are you also doing something that's intentional? I know we're just on the other side of Clergy Appreciation Month, the month of October, when, that's when clergy get a lot of nice cards and they get a lot of, thank yous. But what happens in the other 11 months of the year? What happens, when it's not a special month that says, oh, yeah, thank you for what you do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for what you've sown into my life. Now, I know in this current climate that there have been some clergy abuses. There have been, stories about how clergy have been unethical. Mm-hmm. in some regards, and some people hold that up as their reason for mistreating or not acknowledging, respecting, honoring other clergy for the work that they do. But outside, if a clergy person has sown into your life, has ministered, has stood with you and journeyed with you through the ebbs and flows and the highs and lows of your life, say thank you. Mm-hmm. Show your gratitude, show your care, show your concern. Clergy are people too. There's this idea that, well, you work for God, God will take care of you. Well, God set us in community. God set us down in community. And so we need each other in order to thrive. Mm-hmm. And I think people miss that. They sometimes believe that everything we need we'll get from osmosis.
It will just appear. And I think some of that also is on clergy who try to present this image that they have it all together, that they don't need anything. And so that also can contribute to this facade that, clergy are impervious to any challenge, any trouble. That clergy can face it all versus, hey, let me be open, let me be honest, let me be vulnerable and let you see that I'm another believer, another follower just like you. I'm just called to this particular calling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that clergy, we do ourselves a disservice by not being self-aware. I call it pastoral masking. Wearing a mask to hide the pain. Because to be quite honest for you, in some denominations, if you have to be careful how much you expose, because it could cost you your job, right? Mm-hmm. It's very difficult for clergy leaders to not only acknowledge depression, sadness, grief, loss, but to share it. Mm-hmm. Right? To be vulnerable enough. Now, I'm not suggesting in any way that you be vulnerable with congregants, and that's where the self-awareness comes in. What is appropriate?
Right.
Where are your resources? Who do you have locked into your phone who is your go-to person? Who is your go-to team?
Mm-hmm.
Who's your go-to team? Who's the first 5 individuals that you would call if you were feeling not yourself? Right? Who are your accountability partners?
Who are the
Can
people you can be
them?
real with? Right.
Absolutely. Who can you take your robe off in front of, your Superman cape, and not be ashamed?
That's powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's building up a community of people that love you, that want the best for you, who you trust, who you can be yourself with and not feel judged or criticized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's the not being judged part that I think is critical. So many leaders struggle with themselves needing to project this image that they're concerned that if they allow someone to see where they're vulnerable, that now all of a sudden that becomes a space of judgment that they can't rebound from.
Yeah. I have great friends. I have great colleagues. I rely on good friendships. The Bible says in a multitude of counselors, there's safety.
Mm-hmm.
I affirm wise counsel. I live by it. I embrace it. I need it. Because I know I'm not an island unto myself. Who is that?
Not someone healthy.
So I'm always learning. I'm always evolving. I'm always being developed. Not only by God, not only in my skill set, but by the people around me who help to grow me. Just like congregations grow you and clients grow you and patients grow you, you ought to be learning in every experience. Mm-hmm. When you've gotten to the place where you are not willing to learn, that you're not willing to grow.
Exactly.
And that's a tragedy.
What have you found in your work and your research kind of in preparing for dealing with clergy with depression in particular? Because that sometimes is that silent isolation that clergy go through when they're struggling with depression and they really, unfortunately, turn inward versus seek out help. What have you found in your work?
Well, I'll go back to the fact that you should have accountability people. Who know when you don't sound like yourself. You don't look like yourself. You get disheveled today. Is everything okay? You never show up with a shirt not ironed. What's going on? Something's not right here, right? But what I found is clergy simply want a safe place. Yes, I think that the greatest gift we could give to clergy is to create safe spaces for them to be who they are outside of the pastoral role. So many times we expect pastors to always be in performance mode, right? Without allowing them room enough to be who they are. And some of that is the pastor's responsibility as well, the clergy's responsibility of being self-aware. Like I mentioned before, knowing what your limitations are, knowing that yes, it's a calling, but it is also a role that you function in. It is not who you are. So yes, I would say creating safe spaces for pastors to be able to not only uncover, but discover who they are. And for many, to be quite honest, they might not know who they are yet because they have been hiding behind the mask of this role and not living into the fullness of what God has called them to be.
I think one of the things that was most surprising to me is I'm from the Baptist tradition as well. And I know pastors who couldn't even consider going on sabbatical. They wouldn't even consider taking time away from serving to replenish. And that to me is sad in some ways, but it also just means there needs to be more education, not only for
Right.
clergy, but also for the faith community that supports the clergy.
And I think that sometimes pastors who have assumed positions feel as if they're doing a dishonor to the person that mentored them, or whatever. This is how Bishop so-and-so did it, and so this is how I'm going. No. Post-acute COVID, it's called innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Innovation doesn't mean that you're throwing away tradition. It means that you're recreating. Jesus was
Right.
always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Christ was always evolving. And I think Christ was a great model for us in ministry to always evolve. Don't get stuck in the way so-and-so did it. What is working for your context, for the people that you are pastoring, what is working for you? God didn't just call you. God also considered what your heart's desires are, what your passions, who you are as a person. God requires we bring all of ourselves, not just the call.
Right.
But all of ourselves. It's called wholeness. And wholeness says, I get to play a few rounds of golf.
Mm-hmm.
I get to bake with Scotty. I get to go to Belize. That's wholeness. I wish above all things that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. Be in health. Live into health. Not into the idea of what you think it ought to be. Live into the fullness of what God has given you. Right? That's balance.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one last thing I want to leave our audience with are some ways that how clergy can begin to make sure that they're taking care of themselves and navigate. And then how can faith communities be more intentional to take care of our clergy?
Insisting that pastors take sabbatical. No matter what's going on in the life of the church.
Right.
There are too many opportunities out here for pastors to take sabbaticals. The Lily Fund even provides that. And what that sabbatical might look like. For new pastors or new clergy, work it into the contract, negotiate it into the contract. Mental health break.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health counseling sessions. Work it into the contract. These are ways that you can take care of your pastor or your minister. Christmas time comes or whenever the pastoral anniversary, pay for a few sessions.
Right. Give them that as a Christmas gift.
As opposed to a set of golf clubs. Yeah. So those are simple ways that you can ensure that the person who cares for you is also receiving care.
You know, this has been such a powerful podcast today. I think the topic alone, and for those of you who are listening, you may not recognize, but we have had our share of technical difficulties. But two praying women are going to chalk it up to the game. And we had a prayer break in the middle of everything, and we will carry on. We will lift up that bloodstained banner and carry it on to the end, because this topic is so important. It is under discussed, under represented in the world of Christendom, and that's why it needed to come forth today. So I'm going to ask Dr. Wimberly if you have any final thoughts that you want to share, and definitely tell the people how they can get in touch with you. You work directly with clergy and clergy families, I believe. So if you want them to contact your practice, give them all the information so they can find you.
Yeah. I would say take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. The work will always be there to do. The work will always be, there will always be the poor among you. There will always be the sick. There will always be the hurting. There will always be the lonely. There will always be, right? Take care of yourself.
All right. If you could give us your contact information so they can reach out for you with some clergy care.
Sure. info@huldaconsulting.com. INFO at Hulda, HULDAH, consulting.com.
All right. That's awesome. For those of you who are listening, who are clergy or clergy family, definitely reach out for Reverend Dr. Wimberly. Her practice definitely can help you. If you are in a faith community and you know that your leader could benefit from talking to someone, why don't you encourage them to say, hey, I want you to be your best self. Let me give you some information about a practice that I think works well for clergy. Okay. We are thankful that you all have listened this week. So glad. Thank you again, Dr. Wimberly, for being here with us and bringing this topic forth. God's blessings on you and your continued work with clergy and clergy depression in particular. And thank you, everyone.
Check out Dr. Glenn's new journal series titled Brain Dump Journals for the Busy, available on Amazon. Visit our websites for more information at thetheotherapist.com or catriceglenn.com.